Hey guys, it's Ryan Beliveau here from the Hustle and Grind podcast. This is actually going to be our reboot first episode. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. We tried to do this podcast a couple years ago. I'll be honest, we kind of half-assed it and didn't really fully commit. And we weren't really happy with the end product or the episode that we launched. So we took a step back and learning what we know as entrepreneurs and business owners ourselves, we fully committed. Now we have great equipment. We have a team. Scott, my co-host, Alex, our producer and editor, some other team members, and a great location here in Byron in the West End of London, Ontario. And we're really fully committing to this to make sure that we really build this out as a proper podcast. We're going to be really excited to introduce and have guests on that are local entrepreneurs, local business owners. And this isn't going to be your standard, hey, what did you have for breakfast in the morning? What gets you up in the morning? What's your best success? This is actually going to be very gritty and understanding really kind of the unsexy nature of entrepreneurship and small business ownership of, what were your failures, and learning from that and understanding for anyone else that is thinking about entrepreneurship to really get in the game and understand really what it takes, what the grind is, thus the name of the podcast, Hustle and Grind, and really what it takes. So we have an episode coming up here. I'm really excited to share with you, myself and co-host Scott Wain, and we're going to really get into it and kind of reintroduce and reboot this podcast for you as our kind of first episode. And then we're going to roll into having guests. We have an amazing lineup of guests that we're going to bring to you. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Ryan, what's happening, man?
What's up, Scott? We're back. So we're back on our Hustle and Grind podcast after 2 years.
It's been a minute.
And we're here to talk about why, I think.
Yeah, may as well. I mean, life is hard.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
Yeah.
You've got the best of intentions.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there's a curveball that switches things up on you.
So maybe we should let the audience know a little bit if they haven't heard. So what happened is that we a couple of years ago, Scott and I started a podcast called Hustle and Grind, which essentially is about exploring entrepreneurship, small business owners, the challenges, the deep dive, that sort of thing. And we launched on social media, branded it very well, I think, and it created a real buzz.
It did. Absolutely.
Like right away. And there's some lessons to be learned here, because I think that as this is a venture for us, there are some missteps that happen that we should have known better, but it's reality of starting a new venture, a new business.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We had the best of intentions. We were at a space. We went to record our first episode, and the room just didn't work. We were in the same room.
Yeah.
The equipment we had was mediocre at best.
Yeah.
The sound was awful. We ended up recording that episode in separate rooms. We literally separated. And first episode was all right. I think we had some good chats, and we, I guess, started to record an episode with a guest.
Mm-hmm.
Also, didn't work out well. He was in his car, I think, with his AirPods, and again, quality of sound just wasn't quite there. And then something happened with you and your business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, we all have, we both have kids and a family, and those the things that come along with managing the household and touring your kids around town takes some time, and we're here to hit the reset button.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a restart, a reset. And I think it's important that we talk about and just be very open and vulnerable about our experience of starting a new venture. You and I are not new to starting businesses, right? And startups and entrepreneurship and sales and all that stuff. And with two guys with all kinds of experience and knowledge about how to start a business, we kind of failed at our own venture, right? So how difficult is it to start a business, to start a venture, to be an entrepreneur when you have all the experience we do and we just totally misstepped? And it wasn't intentional. I mean, like, I think what happened is that we started it. It took on a bit of a mind of its own. And we just thought, well, let's do it. But within that, let's just do it, we didn't take the time to really invest in the right equipment, like you said, the right space. We now have great equipment. We have this beautiful, wonderful space in Byron in the West End of London. And I think that it's a lesson learned for any entrepreneur or anyone that wants to start a business is don't do it half-assed. Like, you do it half-assed, you're going to get half-assed results. And that's what we did. And we should have known better, I think. Should have known better. Right? Yeah. But it just shows how hard it is to start a venture. And I'm proud that we stopped when we did. And now we're here resetting properly. You know, obviously, like you said, things went on, life happened with our own businesses, our own families, that sort of thing. But here we are now, and we decided, are we going to do this? If we're going to do it, we're going to commit. If we don't do it, if we're not all going to commit, and there's someone else in the room too, Alex, who's our producer and editor, and you know, it's not just Scott and I. There's a team, right? And I think that was the other part too, is that we didn't really surround ourselves with the people that were committed to doing this properly. You know?
Yeah, and you know, there's something to be said about. And we, even Alex, before we even started recording today, it doesn't have to be perfect. Mm. We can, one of those, it's like paralysis by analysis, right? Mm. If you want, so, you know, back to your point about, you know, don't half-ass it. Mm. I think sometimes though, it's just taking a step, right? And so we took some steps, but we just hit the brakes and pivoted and life took us in another direction and it wasn't a priority anymore. Mm. So depending on where you're at, what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, if it's starting a business, whether you're doing it on the side because you got a full-time gig, or whether, you know, you've got some, maybe you got some investors and you're in it full time. Either way, it's just, I always say an inch an hour is still 2 feet a day.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, you might have a mountain to climb, but you're not going to get anywhere if you're sitting still, if you're idle, right? So even if you're moving like an inch an hour, you look back a year from now, 2 years from now, and you know, all of a sudden, maybe you're not at the mountaintop yet, but you're still not at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you wonder, like, and I mean, I see this a lot at owning a marketing agency and talking to a lot of new business owners, right? And just understanding very quickly that if they're committed or not, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way, but it's like I can tell if someone that just started a new business if they're committed or not, and that allows me to understand, like, do I want to work with and help this person build their business, or do they have a lot of the mountain to climb still before they get that help, that marketing help or the sale, or you know what I mean, like, and yeah.
Well, let me ask you, because obviously running in the agency, money is a thing, right? You need new clients to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Depending on what your overhead is, what nut are you trying to crack on a monthly basis just to cover the cost of operation? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it happens more often than not, probably, especially in the startup world. You don't have the money to invest in or hire an agency.
Yeah.
So you're kind of mucking about. You create a Facebook page, maybe you got an Instagram page or some other socials, you know, whatever it might be. And you have the best of intentions to grow and market your business. But depending on what that business is, marketing's not likely your forte.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I think that it's a good understanding of new business owners to understand that, there's a lot of hats that need to be worn as a new business owner. One, sales, like you said, if you don't have the money or the revenue to pay for marketing, then, you're probably going to sink pretty quickly. Right. So not that everyone needs to be an extroverted entrepreneur. Most of us aren't. Most of us are introverted. But understanding that nothing's going to happen without a sale. It really won't. And you're going to get those friends and family that are going to really support you right off the bat. And that's great. And that's going to pump your tires, and give you some energy. But once that dries out, what does that cold funnel of leads look like? And are you working at that, because that's going to sustain you, or else it's going to dry up overnight. Does that make sense? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think part of the grind, right, is identifying something that you have a bit of interest and passion for, because it's going to get difficult. Yeah. It's going to get exhausting. Yeah. And if it's not something that you're actually into, it's going to become even that much more of a challenge to make it work. Right?
Yeah.
So, because man, I have thought about a million business ideas over the years.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And, doesn't mean that some of them weren't great ideas, but I can remember way back, I left the car biz in 2008, had a pretty cushy gig, was doing quite well, and left to start a software company with a few buddies. And I can remember when I gave my letter to the dealer, he took the envelope. I was about to resign, and he tucked it under his keyboard and he said, "Scotty, I want you to reconsider what you're doing here." Of course, at the time I was much younger, and it's like, how does he know what's going on here? Like, what? He's like, "Look, great idea. I know what you guys are up to, but you're going to run out of money in 6 months. You guys are undercapitalized." And of course, I thought I was going to rule the world. Yeah. And we had an idea. So he had a crystal ball. He'd been through it. He's more seasoned, more experienced. He could see it. And he was right, man. Like, to the day, almost 6 months later, we ran out of money. Yeah. And we were at the drawing board. And of course, I wasn't real interested in crawling back with my tail between my legs into the car biz. And I got into financial service world and landed a gig with Investors Group. It didn't take me, well, I guess it probably took me a couple of years to figure out, but I kind of got into the gig for the wrong reason. I was chasing the money. You see these financial advisors, they're playing golf every day, right? They're wearing nice suits. They got the nice digs. They're eating lunch. They're out for dinners, So I was chasing that vibe. Yeah. And then realized that some of my colleagues were so much more passionate about finance than I was. And then the guilt set in. I had friends and family that were clients. Right. And I started to question, like, they might be better served with my colleague over here.
Oh, interesting.
Because they are so much more fired up. And if you can think back to 2008, the markets were a bit up and down. Like, shit was going sideways. Yeah. Not necessarily the best time for a new financial service advisor to get going. Yeah. Yeah. So the Business News Network was on, and in the bullpen, we called it. And, shit was going sideways, as I said. And all of a sudden, I had this shadow of doubt, like, I'm in the wrong place here. So, that was something that I learned back then. It's like, if you're chasing it for the dollars, it may not end well if you don't actually have a passion that aligns with what you're doing.
Well, it's a good point, because it's like, does every passion result in a business that you can monetize? I would probably argue that no, it doesn't.
Maybe not.
So that's a balancing act, right? It's like, and you bring up a good point of like being passionate about you. We all want to be passionate and like what we do. But it's like, how can you convert that passion into a monetized, kind of venture or new business? And I think that that needs to be a little bit of the business IQ that new business owners need to understand, to be like, okay, I love organizing things. I'm going to start a business organizing people's shelves or closets or whatever, right? Okay, that's great. You love organizing, but like, how do you monetize that? Like what are the logistics of that? Like, are people actually looking for that service? Are they willing to pay your price point? You have to drive places. That's going to be gas. It's going to be, there's all these things, right? That I think that you can be passionate about it, but if you're not taking the correct steps to understand what the logistics are, it's a fine line, right?
Totally. So how do you, because this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. How do you take that first step? Because based on what you're saying, like, we don't know what the logistics are. How do I actually monetize this? Is this a service that somebody's interested in paying for?
Yeah.
Am I undercharging? Am I overcharging? Right? Like, there's so many variables, but at the same time, it's a dangerous trap to be paralyzed without even taking that step. And we don't want anyone who's listening to like pump the brakes if they're chasing something.
Yeah.
Because, they may not have all the logistics sorted out.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's not the right message either.
No, you're right.
But, and you and I think are a little different in that sense too, where, you'll get an idea, and this is maybe where the hustle and grind, the name of the pod sort of plays out in real life, is you just go and like hammer time, get shit done.
Yeah.
Where I'm maybe more on the other side of like, I'll just feel this out. I'll poke at it.
Yeah.
I'll chip away.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. And that's a bit of a balance between at least from, how well I know you.
Yeah, no. And I agree with you. But I also think that's what makes a good partnership. As we enter in this venture and explore this together, there may be things you're like, hey, Rye, like just, pump the brakes for a sec. Right. And I think, and I know that I need that, right. In a business partner and friendships, family, whatever. Right. And with my wife, and it's like, I know that it's like, okay, we'll just get this done and then worry about it later. And that can be a positive thing. It can also be a very negative thing. So I need people like you in my life to understand that. Similarly, like, you may need someone like me to be like, fuck it, let's just go.
100%.
And I think that's what makes a good partnership. And when you think about partnerships, that's the other thing too, is that like, selecting the right partner. Like, I've had businesses that have failed with friends that I thought would be great business partners. We're great friends, shitty business partners, and now we're not friends. Yeah, so
which sucks.
It totally sucks, and it really sucks. You learn the hard way. That's happened to me a few times, and it's like, why is that? Are you too similar? Are you too different? What is that?
I don't know. I think in some cases too, especially if there's a friendship, do you say what you are thinking at risk of upsetting your buddy, even though it's probably the right conversation to have?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, like, no one gets super excited about a difficult conversation.
No.
But when it comes to money and finance and direction of a business, I mean, I worked with my brother for a few years. Absolutely loved it. But it came with some challenges.
Right. So you're working with your brother.
Yeah.
Like,
and I don't want to jeopardize our relationship.
No.
As family.
No, like, that's high risk.
High risk. But, going in, we both discussed the fact that there's going to be some difficult conversations.
Right.
And there were.
Yeah.
And there were. And we're not working together as closely now as we were.
Right.
But I just wanted to segue part of, I think what we hope this pod can be, because you don't necessarily need a business partner to make some magic happen. But what you do need is someone or something to help you navigate the path, because there's going to be different surprises that pop up that maybe you didn't see coming, or something you thought was coming presents itself differently than what you expected.
Right.
So, I hope this pod can just be a bit of a resource for folks who are looking for something. And it might not even be their own business. It might just be doing, having more success in the role that they're at, working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think one of the advantages of having an entrepreneurial mindset is it's not just strictly related to owning a business.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially in the sales side of things. And I've been in sales for basically my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, find somebody who's maybe done something a little bit different, maybe who's had some success. And that's what we kind of hope to bring some guests onto this pod, like, folks who are willing to share their story and trials and tribulations, and, maybe help somebody see around a few corners so that they can, avoid some of those.
Yeah. Well,
mistakes.
it's getting a mentor is a great way to see some things that you may not. I think that's one thing I wish I would have done as a younger entrepreneur, is kind of sourced out a mentor that had a little bit more experience. And then I like how you say surrounding yourself with the right people, and that could be, again, like business partners, a team like we have here to make this podcast happen, your spouse, your family, there's all these variables that need to be supporting you in your entrepreneurial journey, because it's very lonely. And I think you need that support system around you, because if you don't have it, I really just don't think it's going to work. And I've seen where there have been entrepreneurs that don't have a support system. Luckily I do, you do, we have kids, we have a family, we have other obligations, but you do have that understanding, that support.
Well, and I think we're fortunate in that sense, because that may not be the case for everybody.
Right.
Because some of what you would call their support system may think you're nuts.
Yeah.
Why on earth would you go down this path and create the business? Think of all the risks. Think of all the shit that can go wrong. How are you going to sustain yourself? What's going to happen if this happens? It's like, so that's another tough decision, is like, where do you wash out that noise?
That's that paralysis by analysis that you talk about.
Well, that, and just like, listen, we are a creature of our own environment, right? And I always say perception is our reality.
Yeah.
So depending on your background and your network and kind of who you've been surrounded by, are they willing to take risks, or are they just stay put in a job that they hate? They're miserable, but because it's safe, it's got some security, it pays the bills. Yeah. You probably know folks who go to work and are miserable.
Oh yeah.
Hate their job.
Yeah.
And I would rather, because I've done it a dozen times or more, hit the reset button, start a new chapter. Yeah. Rather than, spend the next 10 years being miserable because it's a little bit more secure. Yeah. Yeah. So lots to unpack.
Well, we're going to get into it with a lot of guests, a lot of local entrepreneurs and business owners. I'm excited, man, to dig in and hear the stories. This is not going to be a podcast of like, hey, what gets you up in the morning? What'd you eat for breakfast? I think what people can expect is that we're going to really dive deep into the grind, into the grittiness of owning a business, into the unglamorous kind of part of business ownership. At least I hope that that's what we're able to explore here, right? Because if we just sit here and we just ask business owners, tell us about your greatest success, tell us about what's about your bit, and give us your 5-minute elevator pitch about that's not this. No. That's not us. Like, we're here to really dig in and understand, what were your failures, And you know, we talk about our failure here as we're restarting this. Like, what were those failures, and what are people, and what did you learn from it? What are others going to learn from it? Right? Like, that's what I want to. And I know similarly, you're really interested in that too.
Absolutely, and I mean, I just love talking shop.
Yeah,
right? Like that's really the you know, I just love talking business, talking shop, and I think when you can do that, you know, you can hopefully uncover a bit of value. And you know, anyone who's listened today, we appreciate the time you've taken. There's lots of media available for you to consume. Yeah. So if you've stopped by here today, and you're still listening this deep into the chat, then hopefully we've sparked a little interest to have you come back.
Well, I know that Scotty and I could talk for hours and hours on this. We're not going to do that this time. We'll allow our guests to do that. So we look forward to kind of jumping back on with our guests, and we'll start pumping out all the information on socials and that sort of thing. But this was a good reset. I'm excited. Great space, great equipment, great producer over there, Alex, in the behind the camera, and the brains behind the operation. And let's go. Let's do it.
Thanks,
good
man.
Stuff. All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you soon, guys.
Yes.